Welcome to TIG King's YouTube channel. Today I will share my experience for those of you who are considering buying and setting up a welder at home. The main topics I want to share are as follows. Do I need a water cooler for my welder? What size gas cylinder should I use? How to DIY a 240-volt electrical outlet for a welding machine. First, let me talk about the water cooler. There are two types of TIG torches, air-cooled and water-cooled. Air-cooled welding torches get hot if used continuously with high welding current, and in severe cases, the torch may explode. The advantage is that they are very light, so it is good to weld in position. On the other hand, water-cooled torches prevent the torch from getting hot by circulating water inside the torch. The disadvantage is that the torch is heavy and expensive. In addition, you need a water cooler with an extra cost. Personally, I think a water cooler is a must-have welding equipment. I remember it cost about $500 to $600 for my one. Some of you may be wondering what kind of a cooler to use. I live near Toronto, where the winter is quite long and cold. So I bought antifreeze coolant especially for welding. The torch never freezes but is too expensive. If I were you, I would find other alternatives. Unless you live in an extremely cold area, the ionized water or distilled water would be good enough. Second, the gas and cylinder size. TIG welding is also called argon welding because TIG uses argon for shielding as well as purging. You can purchase argon gas from local companies which carry industrial gases such as propane, oxygen, nitrogen, or argon, etc. I use two cylinders, the large one and the small one. At first, I only used the small cylinder, but I had to change it after a few hours. It was also a hassle to carry around to fill up the gas a couple of times a week. Nowadays, I use the small one when I have to visit customers to provide welding service because it is convenient to carry. The cylinder you are looking at now is very convenient because it has an integrated regulator. But it is very expensive. It costs $350 to buy a cylinder and $75 to charge the gas. I use the large one at home. The large cylinder itself is leased annually. The annual lease fee is $100 per bottle, and the gas filling fee is about $100. It is very good price compared to a small cylinder. In my case, I weld for about an hour a day, and I think I fill it up once every couple of months. It is inconvenient to carry, but if you only weld at home, I recommend the largest cylinder for economical reasons. I use a dual gas regulator. One is for shielding gas and the other is for purging. Mostly I do stainless steel welding, so I need a purge gas line as well as a shielding gas line. This dual gas regulator is convenient. I have a fire extinguisher. It is a must-have item for safety. You have to be extremely careful when you weld at home. You should get rid of any flammable chemicals and minimize any grindings. When I purchased the welder 5 years ago, there was no 240-volt outlet in my garage. So I connected it to a 120-volt outlet using a pigtail adapter. But I could not continue welding for more than 5 minutes because the breaker was tripped over and over again. Installing 240-volt outlet was mandatory for me to make money. Now I will explain my DIY experience about installing 240-volt welder outlet. First, you have to decide whether to do it by yourself or hire an electrician. I did it myself. I couldn't spend $1,000 just to hook up my welding machine. And the distance from the electrical panel to the welder outlet was just 6 feet. I spent about $200 on parts, and it took about 3 hours. However, DIY may be prohibited by law depending on where you live. In this case, you have to hire a certified electrician. If you break the law and do yourself, your home insurance may not cover the accidents such as electrical fires. You should contact your local city or electrical safety association to find out if you can install and remove electrical equipment by yourself or not. In my area, the landlord can do it yourself. However, a permit and inspection are required. Therefore, I decided to do it myself. The parts I bought are as follows: 40 amp breaker, 8 gauge wire, 650 receptacle, electrical outlet box. 240 volt welder plug is N650. N stands for National Electrical Manufacturing Association. 6 means 2-pole 3-wire configuration. 50 means 50 amp capacity. Therefore, I was supposed to use 50 amp breaker and 6 gauge thickness wire. But I used 40 amp breaker and 8 gauge wire because my welder is rated no more than 40 amp according to its specification. I might have violated the electrical code, but the breaker has never been tripped for last 5 years. Wiring. This was another concern. In general wiring, the red wire is the hot line. However, the manual says the black and white are the hot lines and green is the ground. A neutral is not used. Red will not be used to supply power. I decided to trust the welder manual. I wired it as written in the manual. I always make mistakes. I installed the receptacle upside down, but it is annoying, so I'm using it as is. In case I sell my house, I covered the open drywall with masking tape to make it easier to remove later. This is my experience in installing 240 volt welder outlet. There might be many mistakes and code violations. I hope you learn a lot from my trial and errors. There are so many TIG welders on the market, from $100 up to $10,000. It is even more difficult to recommend a specific TIG machine because users also have different purposes for using the TIG machine. I will briefly introduce my welder, thinking that a TIG welder should have at least these functions. Please take it as a reference only. You may get me wrong, so I don't show my welder brand name. My welder can do TIG and stick welding, but I only use TIG. Price: 1,700 Canadian dollars. Not only DC, it has AC, so it can weld aluminum. However, if you weld a lot of aluminum jobs, I recommend a welder with a higher performance. My welder is not good enough to weld thick aluminum. It also has a pulse function, but I feel it isn't good enough. My machine has a high-frequency start and lift start. I recommend the machine with high-frequency start. It is very convenient. I can use a foot pedal as well as a torch switch. This is another good thing. It can be connected to 120 volt and 240 volt both. I wouldn't have bought this machine if it had only 120 volt. Max weld current is 125 amp when it is connected to a 120 volt electrical outlet. Max weld current is 200 amp when it is hooked up to a 240 volt outlet. Weld current 200 amp is good enough for most welding jobs. Pre-flow, post-flow, downslope. These are basic functions for a TIG machine. Overall, I'm quite satisfied with my current welding machine. Lastly, when connecting the gas line to the machine, be sure to tighten the hose fitting while holding the female fitting with a wrench. If not, the bezel that holds the female fitting in place may be damaged. This is all I have prepared for today. Please understand I can't recommend a specific welding machine, but I'm sure this episode can help you to make a decision for a machine and setup. Thanks for watching and see you next week.